Hello everyone, welcome to Whispers of Reza. If you enjoy peaceful, emotional, and meaningful stories, please support the channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to Whispers of Reza. Now, take a slow breath. For the next few minutes, forget about everything waiting for you outside this moment. Forget the messages you haven't answered. Forget tomorrow. Forget yesterday. Just breathe. Because sometimes, the thing we need most isn't another achievement. It isn't more money. It isn't another person. It isn't a perfect life. Sometimes, we simply need peace. There was once a person who seemed to have everything. A good life, people around them, dreams they were working toward. And yet, every night when the world became quiet, their mind became louder. They worried about tomorrow. They replayed yesterday. They thought about things they had said, things they should have said, and things they wished they could change. Their body was tired, but their mind refused to rest. And slowly they began to understand something. Being physically exhausted is not the only kind of exhaustion. Sometimes, the mind becomes tired before the body does. Maybe you know that feeling. You lie in bed, but your thoughts keep moving. One thought becomes another. One worry creates another worry. You imagine problems that haven't happened yet. You remember mistakes that cannot be changed. And suddenly, you are living everywhere except the present moment. Your body is here, but your mind is somewhere else. We live in a world that constantly tells us to move faster, work harder, achieve more, become more successful, keep going. But nobody teaches us how to stop. Nobody teaches us that resting is not laziness. Nobody teaches us that silence can be productive. Nobody reminds us that sometimes doing nothing is exactly what the soul needs. The person in our story eventually decided to stop running. One morning, they walked away from the noise. They found a quiet place beside a lake. There were no notifications, no deadlines, no expectations, only the sound of the wind and the gentle movement of the water. At first, the silence felt strange, almost uncomfortable, because when the outside world becomes quiet, we finally hear what is happening inside us. They sat there for a long time, and for the first time, they didn't try to fix their thoughts. They simply watched them. A worry appeared. They noticed it. Painful memory appeared. They noticed it. A fear appeared. They noticed it. And slowly they realized something important. A thought is not a command. Just because your mind says something doesn't mean you have to believe it. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean something terrible is going to happen. And just because today feels difficult doesn't mean tomorrow will feel the same. Peace doesn't mean having no problems. Peace means learning that not every problem deserves your entire attention. You cannot control everything. You cannot control what people think. You cannot control what happened yesterday. You cannot completely control what tomorrow will bring. But you can control the way you meet the present moment. You can breathe. You can pause. You can choose not to let every thought become a storm. And that was the beginning of their journey. Not a journey toward a perfect life, but toward a quieter mind. Because sometimes, inner peace begins with something incredibly simple. Stopping. Just stopping for a moment, and breathing. The next morning, the person returned to the lake. They sat in the same place. The water was calm. The wind was gentle. And for a few minutes, they simply watched the sunrise. They began to understand that peace was not something they had to search for somewhere far away. It was something they had to allow themselves to experience. But there was one thing standing in the way. They were carrying too much, too many memories, too many regrets, too many expectations, too many things they couldn't change. Sometimes we think holding on makes us stronger. We hold on to people who have already left. We hold on to conversations that ended years ago. We hold on to mistakes that we made when we were different people. We hold on to anger because we believe letting go means admitting that what happened didn't matter. But letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means deciding that the past no longer gets to control your present. The person remembered someone who had hurt them deeply. For years, they had replayed the same memories. They had asked themselves, why did this happen? Why did they treat me that way? What did I do wrong? But that morning they asked a different question. How much longer do I want to carry this? And suddenly, the answer became clear. They were tired. Not tired of life. Tired of carrying pain that no longer belonged in their future. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Forgiving someone doesn't mean saying that what they did was acceptable. It doesn't mean inviting them back into your life. It doesn't mean forgetting what happened. Sometimes forgiveness simply means saying, I choose my peace over my anger. You don't have to carry someone else's actions forever. Their mistake doesn't have to become your identity. Their words don't have to become your inner voice. Their rejection doesn't determine your worth. And there is another person you may need to forgive. Yourself. Maybe you regret a decision. Maybe you trusted the wrong person. Maybe you wasted time. Maybe you weren't the person you wanted to be. But remember, you made those choices with the knowledge, emotions, and strength you had at that time. Today you know more. Today you understand more. And that means you have grown. Don't punish the person you used to be for not knowing what you know today. If this message is helping you find even a small moment of peace, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Whispers of Reza. And if you want, write one word in the comments. Peace. Sometimes, even a simple word can remind us of what we are trying to create inside ourselves. The person slowly started letting go. Not all at once, but little by little. They stopped checking things that only caused anxiety. They stopped trying to get answers from people who couldn't give them. They stopped explaining themselves to everyone. They stopped trying to control every outcome. And something beautiful happened. Their mind became lighter. They learned that not every door needs to be opened. Not every argument needs to be won. Not every message needs a response. Not every person needs access to your heart. Sometimes silence is an answer. Sometimes distance is protection. And sometimes walking away is an act of self-respect. Peace grows when you stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. You don't need to prove your worth to everyone. You don't need everyone to understand your journey. You don't need approval from people who don't know the battles you've survived. Your life is not a performance. You don't have to live it for an audience. That evening, the person returned home. For the first time in years, they didn't feel the need to solve everything before going to sleep. They understood something simple. Some questions can wait until tomorrow. Some problems need time. Some wounds need patience. And sometimes, the most peaceful thing you can say to yourself is, I don't have to figure everything out tonight. So they turned off the light, took a deep breath, and finally, allowed themselves to rest. The following weeks were different. The person began to notice something they had never paid attention to before. Their mind was always somewhere else. When they were eating, they were thinking about work. When they were working, they were thinking about tomorrow. When they were with people they loved, they were checking their phone. Even during beautiful moments, they were somewhere else. And they realized something painful. They had spent years waiting for life to begin. They kept telling themselves, I'll be happy when I achieve this. I'll relax when this problem is over. I'll enjoy life when everything becomes easier. But life never became perfectly easy. There was always another problem, another goal, another reason to wait. One morning, they decided to practice something simple. Presence. They made a cup of coffee. Instead of checking their phone, they sat near the window. They noticed the warmth of the cup. They listened to the sound of birds outside. They watched the sunlight slowly enter the room. Nothing extraordinary was happening. And yet, for the first time in a long time, they felt completely alive. We often believe happiness comes from extraordinary moments. A huge success, perfect relationship, a dream vacation, a life-changing achievement. But sometimes happiness is much quieter. It is the smell of rain, a warm drink on a cold morning, a conversation with someone you love, peaceful walk, the sound of music when you're alone, the feeling of your bed after a long day. These moments may seem small, but one day, you may realize they were the moments that made your life beautiful. The person began practicing mindfulness. Not perfectly. They still worried. They still overthought. They still had difficult days. But now, when their mind became overwhelmed, they knew what to do. They stopped. They breathed. They looked around. And they asked themselves, what is happening right now? Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Right now. Try it yourself. Take a slow breath. Look around you. Notice 5 things you can see. Notice the sounds around you. Feel your body sitting or standing where you are. Take another breath. You don't need to solve your entire life in this moment. You only need to be here, because the present moment is the only place where life is actually happening. The past can teach you, but it cannot be changed. The future can inspire you, but it cannot be controlled completely. The present is where you have power. It is where you can make a choice. It is where you can breathe. It is where you can begin again. One afternoon, the person received some bad news. Their old reaction would have been panic. They would have imagined the worst possible outcome. They would have spent hours worrying. But this time, they paused. They took a breath. And they asked, what can I actually control? The answer was surprisingly small. They couldn't control everything, but they could control their next step. And sometimes, that is enough. If you're listening to this right now and your mind feels overwhelmed, remember, you don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to know exactly where your life is going. You don't have to have every answer. Take one step, then another. Let tomorrow arrive when it arrives. Don't live tomorrow's pain today. You have enough to carry in this moment. The person began to understand that peace wasn't about controlling life. It was about trusting themselves enough to face whatever life brought. They couldn't promise themselves that nothing bad would ever happen. But they could promise, whatever happens, I will not abandon myself. And that promise changed everything. Some days will still be difficult. Some mornings you'll wake up without motivation. Some nights your thoughts will become loud again. Don't see those moments as failures. Healing isn't a straight line. Peace isn't something you achieve once and never lose. It's something you return to, again, and again, and again, like coming home. That night, the person looked at the stars. They realized how small one human life can seem beneath such a huge sky. And yet, every life matters. Every moment matters. Every breath matters. They smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because they finally understood that perfection was never the goal. Being present was. Being alive was. Being at peace with themselves was. As the months passed, the person began to notice another change. They were no longer searching for peace in other people. For years, they had believed that someone else could save them from their loneliness. They believed the right relationship would make everything better. The right friend, the right partner, the right person. But eventually they understood something important. Other people can bring love into your life, but they cannot build your inner peace for you. That is your responsibility. Becoming your own safe place does not mean you don't need anyone. It means you don't lose yourself when someone leaves. It means you can love someone deeply without making them responsible for your entire happiness. It means you can enjoy someone's presence without being terrified of their absence. That is emotional freedom. The person started spending more time alone. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Silence gave their thoughts too much space. But slowly, solitude became peaceful. They started taking long walks, listening to music, writing down their thoughts, watching the sunset. Sometimes they simply sat quietly, and they discovered something beautiful. They actually enjoyed their own company. Maybe you need that too. Maybe you've spent so much time trying to be there for everyone else that you forgot to be there for yourself. You answer everyone's messages. You listen to everyone's problems. You support everyone when they're struggling. But who supports you? Who listens when you're tired? Who tells you it's okay to rest? You need to become that person for yourself. Talk to yourself with kindness. When you make a mistake, don't immediately say, I'm useless. Say, I made a mistake, but I can learn from it. When you have a difficult day, don't say, I'm weak. Say, today was hard, and I did my best. The voice inside your head becomes the environment you live in. Make that environment peaceful. The person also learned to say no. This was difficult. They had spent years trying to make everyone happy. They said yes when they were exhausted. They accepted things that hurt them. They stayed in situations that destroyed their peace. But eventually, they realized, saying no does not make you a bad person. Having boundaries does not make you selfish. Protecting your peace does not require an apology. Some people may become angry when you change. Some may say you've become distant. Some may not understand your boundaries. That's okay. Not everyone will understand the version of you that finally learned to protect themselves. You don't need permission to grow. If you're enjoying this peaceful journey, take a second to support Whispers of Reza by liking the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. And remember, this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that you deserve peace too. The person stopped chasing people who constantly made them question their value. They stopped begging for attention. They stopped forcing conversations. They stopped trying to convince people to stay. And slowly, their relationships became healthier. Because when you stop fearing abandonment, you stop accepting anything just to keep someone. There is a difference between loneliness and peace. Loneliness says, I need someone to complete me. Peace says, I am already whole. Love can add beauty to your life. Friendship can bring warmth. Family can bring comfort. But your sense of worth must come from within. Because people change. People leave. Circumstances change. But you will always have yourself. One evening, the person returned to the lake where their journey had begun. They sat quietly and watched the sunset. The same lake, the same mountains, the same sky, but they were not the same person anymore. They realized that peace had never been waiting at the end of some perfect future. It had been waiting inside them, underneath all the fear, underneath all the expectations, underneath all the noise. They simply had to become quiet enough to hear it. And for the first time, they didn't feel the need to run anywhere. They were exactly where they needed to be. They took a deep breath, looked at the sunset, and whispered, I am finally home. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. The lake became darker. The wind became quieter. And the person remained there for a few more minutes, simply breathing. They thought about the person they used to be. The anxious person, the exhausted person, the person who constantly worried about tomorrow, the person who carried yesterday everywhere they went. They felt compassion for that version of themselves, because now they understood something. That person wasn't weak. They were simply tired. They needed kindness. They needed rest. They needed someone to tell them, you don't have to carry everything alone. Maybe you need to hear those words too. You don't have to carry everything alone. You don't have to solve every problem tonight. You don't have to make everyone happy. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to become perfect. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to have difficult days. You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to rest. And you are allowed to begin again. Inner peace doesn't mean you will never feel sadness. It doesn't mean you will never become angry. It doesn't mean you will never worry again. It simply means you learn not to let those emotions control your entire life. You feel them, you acknowledge them, and then you let them pass. Like clouds moving across the sky. You are the sky. Your emotions are the clouds. They come. They change. And eventually, they move away. There will be days when life feels heavy again. When your plans fail. When someone disappoints you. When your mind becomes noisy. On those days, remember what you learned. Stop. Breathe. Slow down. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? Maybe you need rest. Maybe you need silence. Maybe you need to talk to someone. Maybe you simply need to give yourself permission to have a bad day. Whatever it is, listen. Your heart has been speaking to you for a long time. Don't wait for a perfect life before allowing yourself to feel peaceful. There will never be a perfect moment. There will always be another goal, another responsibility, another challenge. Peace must exist in the middle of life, not after life becomes perfect. You can find peace while you're still growing. You can find peace while you're still healing. You can find peace while you are still figuring everything out. Maybe that's the real secret. Peace is not something you find. It's something you practice. Every morning, you choose it. Every difficult conversation, you choose it. Every disappointment, you choose it. Every time you feel like reacting immediately, you pause, and you breathe, and you choose again. If this journey has given you even a few minutes of calm, please support Whispers of Reza by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. And before you leave, take one final deep breath. Slowly breathe in, and slowly breathe out. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts become quieter. And remind yourself, I am here. I am safe in this moment. I don't need to have every answer. I can take life one step at a time. The person stood up and began walking home. The world had not changed. There were still problems waiting. There were still responsibilities. There were still uncertain days ahead. But something inside them had changed. They no longer needed life to be quiet, because they had learned how to become quiet within themselves. And that was the greatest gift they could give themselves. So if you're listening to this story tonight, I want you to remember one final thing. Your peace is precious. Protect it. Don't give it away to people who constantly hurt you. Don't sacrifice it for approval. Don't destroy it trying to control things you cannot change. Choose yourself. Choose patience. Choose gratitude. Choose forgiveness. Choose the present moment. And when life becomes overwhelming, come back to your breath. Come back to yourself. Come back home. Maybe tomorrow won't be perfect. Maybe next week won't be easy. But you don't need to know what tomorrow will bring. You only need to take the next step. One breath. One moment. One day. That's enough. And someday, you may look back at this difficult chapter of your life and realize it wasn't the end of your story. It was the moment you finally learned how to live differently. The moment you stopped running. The moment you stopped trying to control everything. The moment you learned to let go. The moment you discovered that peace was never somewhere outside of you. It was inside you, waiting patiently for you to come home. Thank you for spending these peaceful moments with Whispers of Reza. Take care of yourself. Be gentle with your heart. Give yourself permission to rest. And remember, you deserve a peaceful mind. You deserve a peaceful heart. You deserve a peaceful life. Until we meet again, breathe deeply, let go, and choose peace. The end.